Hello everyone, this is Morag Simpson in West Hill, Scotland, reading two of my books, The Secrets of Marmoran and A Move to Marmoran. Now Marmoran is a fictitious island which exists really in children's eyes. The name Marmoran is made up of my friend Marian's name, Mar, and my name, Morag, Marmoran. So, hence Marmoran. Right, the first book begins in Stockbridge in Edinburgh. The doorbell rang, and as Kirsty McSween opened the door that morning, the postman announced that he had in his hand a very important letter, which an adult had to sign for. Kirsty called for her father, who had not as yet set off for work. He duly signed for the registered package. "I'm not expecting an important letter. What could it be?" Upon opening the letter, the doctor sat down. His face was a picture. "What's in it?" asked Kirsty, followed by her brother Douglas, who until then had been engrossed in reading a book. Mother Morag then joined in, asking her husband what was wrong. He handed the letter to his wife. "You look so shocked," she said. She'd read it, utterly astonished at its contents. She too sat down, just as her husband had done. There is something about sitting down after receiving unexpected news. Husband and wife looked at each other in wonderment. Chattering voices in harmony broke the quiet of the moment and were saying, "What's up?" "As you know, Auntie Lottie recently died, and it turns out she wishes our family to have a beautiful baronial home. But the deal is, we will have to go and live there. Her wish is that her home should be full of the sound of children once again. The only catch is, as you know, we live in Edinburgh, and her home lies on the island of Marmoran, off the east coast of Scotland, near to Aberdeen. Off to school you chaps had better go, and we will have to discuss this later." A few rather sleepless nights later, the mum and dad decided to make an appointment with Mr. Smith, the lawyer, just to discuss all the pros and cons of moving, lock, stock and barrel. Aunt Lottie had only had one son of her own, who unfortunately died as a result of a horrendous childhood illness. Thus the McSweens were the only living relatives she had. The following weekend, it was arranged that the McSween family would drive up the 100 or so miles to Aberdeen, arranging the journey to fit in with ferry times to the island. They wanted to make the most of their time there, so they'd make a weekend of it. The journey was over in a flash. The adrenaline was pumping and the children were rather over-exuberant. The main worry was, if the family were to move away from Edinburgh to Marmoran, would there be work for at least one of the parents? It was a very excited family who boarded the ferry to Marmoran, full of wonderment and anticipation. The ferry journey was very short, and they all soon found themselves at the gates of the beautiful old house, which they knew so well. Lottie had died about a year previously, and although her retired gardener lived in the grounds of the big house, there were many weeds in the garden. It was just more than a little overgrown. Lying ahead of them lay the big wrought iron gate, with a ginormous padlock. No need, actually, as Marmoran is probably the safest island ever. Virtually no crime and no need for police. The only very odd bit of crime is usually caused by visitors to the island. Anyway, this house with the big gates was reminiscent of the castle in which Sleeping Beauty went to sleep for 100 years. "I wonder if there's a ghost in there," chanted the children. The smallest key on the huge key ring opened the massive gate, and the largest key fitted the main wooden door within the main door to the home. This is known as a yett. They all walked into the main hall together. It was carpeted in tartan, with walls covered in old pictures of stern-looking men, most of whom had beards or twirly moustaches. Several deer's antlers also adorned the walls. The staircase arose from the centre of the hall, and it took the children no time at all to race from room to room, exploring as they went. They ran up to the first floor and found little pool bells in each room. It did not take long for them to have pulled every bell in the house, with a cacophony of bells ringing in the kitchen. In no time at all, the family had fallen in love with this house, despite the many rooms, the high ceilings, and needs for lots of redecoration and cleaning. Their imaginations were running riot as they could visualize its potential, and more to the point, they knew they would love living there. The next morning, the very chatty postmistress appeared on her bright blue scooter. We were to find out her name was Gabby Aggie, so called because she loved to carry gossip from house to house. Not in a bad way, but she just liked to be the first to have every piece of news. She was eager to find out if the family were impressed with the house, and were they going to stay. As luck would have it, she was able to tell the family that Dr. Singh, the only doctor on the island, was about to return to his native land of India 3 months from now, and so there would be a post becoming vacant soon. Gabby's chat had proved to be invaluable. Dr. Singh had, Gabby announced, done a marvellous job, as he was also a qualified surgeon and had managed to run a very successful surgery where he was also capable of minor surgery that was required. All in all, people on the island kept themselves very healthy, it being an outdoor sort of life, with many of the families living from the land, growing crops and vegetables, or rearing sheep and chickens. Off to Marmoran. The 3 months soon passed, and the Edinburgh family had packed up and were on their way. It had been very sad leaving all their friends behind, but the excitement of the move kept them all going, and after all, Edinburgh is not so far away from Aberdeen and Marmoran. Also, the new house was to be large enough to host several visiting families all at the same time. The island is self-sufficient in so many ways. It is a microclimate, allowing for the growing of fruit and vegetables even off-season. All houses have solar panels on their roofs to provide all the electricity required, and wind turbines produce the extra. All in all, the island is well provided for with regard to power. All homes are warm, with plenty of hot water at all times. On arrival at Marmoran House, the keys having opened the doors, it was a very excited family who entered their new home. For the first time in many years, the house was filled with the sound of young, chattering, happy voices. The children continued to explore as the parents set into the kitchen. As the children were exploring the dining room, Kirsty touched part of the wood panelling by the grand fireplace and felt it move ever so slightly. She called for her brother, and between them they managed to move the panel, providing access to a secret room they had not discovered ever before. The secret room was filled with Chinese sort of furniture we guessed from Lottie and Albert's life in Singapore years ago. Beautiful furniture and dishes adorned the room. The twins decided this room was to be their secret room, unless their parents were to find it out. Back to the bells. The bells which originated in the days when the rich house owner would call for a maid or a butler by ringing a bell, which would be heard in the kitchen area, where the servants would be. The children were driving their mother crazy with the ringing of bells in every room. At least the bells worked. The main bathroom was quite antiquated, with a Victorian-style bath on legs and a toilet with a long chain to pull to make it flush, so different from Stockbridge. All in all, this was to be a beautiful house, but was to require a fair bit of modernisation. Kirsty and Douglas each were to have their own bedroom, blue for Douglas and pink for Kirsty, their own choice. The rooms being connected to each other in case they wanted company at any time. The playroom across the hall was full of all their toys. The removal men had just dumped in there. Along with their toys was the antique rocking horse and train set, along with tiddlywinks and snakes and ladders. Auntie Lottie had always kept these for visiting children. Hidden in the room was a box of outdoor toys and books and jigsaws for rainy days. As it happened, the weather was none too great on the Saturday, so these toys were very appreciated. The children were also to help their parents get the house in order, and 4 pairs of hands are better than 2. They all discovered a wealth of reading material in the library, surrounded by shutters and covered in dust. Once the shutters were open, the rain had lifted, and the particles of dust could be seen in the sun's rays. There were books of every shape and size, and on every topic imaginable. As the parents went down to prepare the evening meal, Kirsty and Douglas ventured next door, into the room facing east. They examined all the glum faces in the portraits, making comments as they moved along. The red carpet of the dining room totally matched the red seat covers, and Mum had already set the table for dinner. The most magnificent candelabra sat on the sideboard, and an array of crystal bottles, decanters, sat alongside, containing some kind of nasty-smelling alcohol. Underneath the sideboard, it turned out, was a large mahogany box, which they discovered was a wine cooler. On either side of the fireplace was a circular brass plate, with what looked like a handle on each side. These were the bells connected to the kitchen. Having made such wonderful discoveries in their new home, the children asked if they could explore the village, which of course was not totally new to them, as they had visited Lottie before, albeit when they were considerably younger. Knowing how safe the village was, the parents just advised them to be sensible. The twins assured them they would just pop in past the retired housekeeper and gardener. They lived in the gatehouse, within the grounds of the house, having been allowed to stay on after retirement. The McSweens were secretly hoping that the old couple could be persuaded to work for a few hours per week, at least until the house was in order. Mr. and Mrs. Rose had worked tirelessly for Aunt Lottie, keeping the house and garden. Looking around at the neglected flower beds, it was hoped that quite soon the house would be back looking tip-top. The couple had been very kind to Lottie, and she to them. Lottie had helped financially set up Marie Rose in her business, making trout patty a special delicacy of Marmoran. Marie Rose's business had been very successful, with shipments of her patty being sent to all the top Michelin star restaurants in Scotland and beyond. Michelin is the name given to the very best of restaurants who are happy to pay high prices for the best foods. Mr. and Mrs. Rose welcomed the twins with open arms, not having seen them for quite some time. They seemed delighted to see them, and they were keen to invite the whole family round, and a dinner date was arranged for a week hence. Mr. and Mrs. Rose are a delightful couple who all the neighbours like to pop in for a chat and some of her home baking. Unfortunately, the following week, at the appointed meal, Kirsty was tucking into a very tasty chicken pie, all made by Mrs. Rose. Having cut through most of the pastry, Kirsty was horrified to see, looking up at her, a whole blue bottle. Not what one normally expects to find in a chicken pie. Mrs. Rose's response was just a shrug of the shoulders and, "Ah, well, it'll gie it an extra bit of flavour." Kirsty's throat had a feeling of, "I never want to eat anything here again." This was unfortunate, as they are some of the friendliest people on the island. Marmoran School. It was soon Monday morning. Dad was off to his new job in the village. In fact, the house being so large, he decided to open up 2 of the rooms in the new home as a waiting room and surgery. This was to simplify things greatly. Mum would wait until the house was more in order before she went looking for some part-time work with animals as a vet. For the time being, Mum was happy to do the odd piece of decorating, working from home, while supervising the tradesmen. Dr. McSween was working from home and was going to allow more freedom for his wife, in that although often working, he would be in the home when the children returned from school. It was time for the twins to set off for school. Trinity School in Stockbridge had consisted of over 500 children, with 30 pupils in every class. Times were becoming tricky with government cutbacks to education budgets, meaning that there was not time nor money for the children to have specialist teachers in the arts. All this was to change for the McSweens. In Marmoran, the uniform of jogging bottoms and purple sweaters over a white polo shirt with the school crest were very much to the twins' liking. On entering the school playground, they were amazed to see so few children, and they were all playing together, the young with the old, none of the rough and tumble they had previously seen at the bigger school. They were introduced to their teacher, Katie. No formalities here, Christian names only. Only 3 classes in the school, each consisting of less than 25 students. The twins, being in primary 7, were the oldest in the school and the only primary 7 pupils in the school. The school had composite classes. Their class contained primary 5, 6 and 7. As they were to discover, their teacher was highly intelligent and well able to find suitable work to keep 2 stars like Doug and Kirsty working enthusiastically each and every day. Marmoran school pupils are so very fortunate in having much of their schoolwork outdoors, as it is known as a forest school. This seems to suit everyone, and the results educationally and socially are second to none. The new family were delighted to discover they had landed lucky in such a great school. Upon entering their new school, the twins learned quite quickly that their topic for the term was to be on Europe and the countries therein. Plenty to occupy everyone studying languages, sport, art and music. Somehow the Commonwealth was mentioned, and it was decided that the pupils of Marmoran would have a link with an African country, which used to be part of our Commonwealth, the Gambia in West Africa. The children at Marmoran School were well supported in the classroom. There was a computer for each child. The children in Gambia were lucky to have 1 computer in the whole school, which also served as the head teacher's one too. When the electricity was working in Gambia, it was great to link up and chat. Fortunately, Gambia's time is the same as the UK, so there was no need to call them in the middle of the night. In Gambia, the Singate school, so called after the man who set it up, had very little in the way of textbooks and resources. The 60 children from one class surrounded the computer and were amazed at what they saw in their Marmoran classroom. After all, in Gambia, the teachers were paid a tiny amount to work in the heat with a blackboard and chalk. There was not enough money for each of the children to have notebook and pencils, so it was decided that the pupils of Marmoran would take on a charity project. By baking cakes to sell at break time, the money raised was go to the Singate school. However, there was a fundraising project to run before that. All the pupils were very excited, not only to be back at school after their holiday, but they were even more excited as a big old red bus pulled up outside, bang on 9 a.m. The register taken, the children were then taken onto the red bus, a class at a time. What surprises lay within, wondered the twins. It was their turn after break, which consisted of a piece of fruit and a bottle of water for everyone. Then the mystery of the bus was to unfold. After the mysteries of Sunday, what could possibly top that? It was with trepidation that the twins climbed aboard, to find sheer delight in front of their eyes. Every child climbed upstairs, to be met with a lesson in playing tuned percussion. Before their eyes was set out an array of glockenspiels and xylophones, which all the primary 5 and 6 could play with ease and great dexterity, all of them being able to read music well. Not only this, but they were playing relatively complex sets of music, set into advanced arrangements. That session over, all the children climbed downstairs for a singing session. The twins were used to singing, but for some reason the singing of this children was in tune, with beautiful phrasing and sensitivity. Big news was the fact that the school choir was to be performing in the Albert Hall in London, just prior to the big prom concerts in July and August. Fundraising for the trip was about to start, by each choir member being given £5, with which we were expected to think of a plan of increasing the sum substantially. Some were to make tablet, others were to paint nails, others knit toys. The ideas were endless. Mrs. Keyes, the music teacher, welcomed the twins with open arms, particularly as they were good readers and could hold the alto, that's the lower part. Most pupils had no problem singing the melody, but the singing of a harmony part has always required a little more skill. It was soon discovered that on each day a specialist teacher arrived to teach music, art, drama, PE, and needlework and cooking. Each day the pupils and staff looked forward to the visiting member of staff. Despite being such a tiny school, the pupils excelled in music, sport, in fact, everything. Marmoran is quite simply a healthy environment for raising children with many happy families within. The choir achieved the top score in a competitive music festival in Aberdeen, meaning that they were invited to sing in an Albert Hall, as I'd said, in a choir festival with schools from all over the UK. This was a great experience for all, and whilst in Marmoran they were the most wonderful choir, they realised that there were other choirs even better than them. It was a great eye-opener for them travelling to London to sing. However, they all thoroughly enjoyed the experience and had many tales to tell on their return home. They were especially fortunate to have 2 fine soloists in Liam and Marion, who sang solo backed by the rest of this little choir. Both of these soloists would bring merry adults to tears with their most sensitive of singing. The Marmoran school turned out to be a great learning environment, with children encouraged to play outside during time off instead of constant playing computer games. Much of the play and work being done outside, the pupils looked after chickens and collected eggs each morning. Much of the maths work was created around the egg collection, with graphs drawn showing the poor output of eggs during the winter months. 6 small ponies had to be cleaned out each morning, teaching the pupils about the responsibility of looking after animals. Everyone had a go at riding these ponies, having learned first to wear protective clothing and hats at all times when riding. All this led to very responsible pupils. Every child being responsible for caring for some part of the school. All had to give a hand, cleaning the classroom at the end of the day too. Despite all these highly motivated, hard-working pupils, there were still 1 or 2 characters within the class. Bertie Belcher was so called because he enjoyed swallowing back wind until it had to pop out of his mouth in the most disgusting way. Mary, sweet Mary, loved her animals so much she would constantly be seen outside, covered in crawling insects. Inside the classroom, she frequently kept a white mouse in her desk or pocket or up her sleeve, just to keep her company. It would be allowed out for a run around the classroom at interval time. It was even taken outside at break time and allowed to run around the woods. It very nearly escaped totally when Mary stopped watching Mousie's antics for a minute, giving him the moment to run for freedom. That escape was short-lived, and he found himself firmly within Mary's grasp and back in her pocket. The secrets. As time went on, the whole family settled into the island. They learned that, for example, They loved Mr. and Mrs. Rose, but were not as keen on Mrs. Rose's hygiene or lack of it. It was surprising, really, as their daughter knew all about health and safety. However, Mrs. Rose was known as a really welcoming hostess, always producing the tastiest of cakes. Just had to be careful there were no blue bottles in them. The twins have quickly become friends with so many of the residents and the neighbours. The farmer Bill, who always sings as he drives his tractor, and who speaks in a Scottish language, such as Kirsty and Douglas had never heard before. There's Winnie, Win for short, who is a vegetarian, and as such is often jet-propelled from behind by an explosion of wind from within her body. Despite her having walking difficulties, she still manages to charge up the hill, Zimmer in front of her, propelled by the gas within. The most delightful members of the neighbourhood tend to be the elderly. They always have time for the twins, who similarly enjoy hearing stories of long ago. Gladys, aged over 90, is beautiful in every way and sings like a song thrush. Quite beautiful her singing is. Marjorie, a great baker of cakes, tells great stories about her work in a girls' boarding school in Aberdeen. Many of the elderly have retired to Marmoran because of its healthier microclimate. Anyway, the parents spend lots of time getting the house in order, painting and papering the walls, and having tradesmen in to renew the bathrooms and kitchen. The children enjoy helping with the painting of the walls, becoming quite skilled by the end. At first they were covered in paint, as it went everywhere, but as they became more experienced, less paint covered their clothing. It was decided to keep a set of old clothes as work clothes. Whilst the parents were engrossed in their work, the children were given more freedom than they'd ever been given in central Edinburgh, and after all, they were aged 11 now. They decided to investigate the secret panels in the dining room. Hand in hand, for comfort just in case, they moved the panelling just a little, and followed the corridor which lay ahead. At the end of the corridor lay a massive chute they boarded together, and with a whoosh found themselves in the most beautiful walled garden. The garden is full of the most beautiful flowers, a treehouse, in fact, a children's paradise. Both Douglas and Kirsty love animals and insects of all kinds, making a garden just paradise for them. They prepared little homes for the hedgehogs, and enjoyed watching all the many bird species and butterflies that abound in this overgrown garden. After exploring for quite some time, in one corner were the letters VKNG. When they pressed these letters, they found themselves looking down on a small town, such as to be found in the Jorvik Viking Centre in York. Anyone lucky enough to have visited the centre will know how clever it is. People going about their business in Viking times, making jewellery, money, implements, tools, and looking after the animals. Chickens,